Greetings, students. I'm back for our last section of keywords and concepts from Chapter 1. So we're in Chapter 1.3, Keywords and Concepts. We do not have a Keywords and Concepts video for the fourth section of the first chapter. Yes, you still have to read it. No, we just don't need to go anything specifically in that section. So, important things for us to understand from this section are: what is a hypothesis? This is extremely important because you have to turn one in soon. A hypothesis is simply a testable proposition, right? So it's a theory, it's an idea for something, right? You're saying, I think X happens because of Y, and here's how we're going to test Y. So that's your hypothesis. We also have in this section the idea of manifest and latent functions. A manifest function is the sought consequence of a social process. So it's the intended function, right? So you go to school, K through 12, to get an education. That is the manifest function of K through 12 education. Now, if we look at latent functions are the unrecognized or unintended consequences of a social process. And often these are the more fascinating ones. So if we go back to our K through 12 examples, a latent function of you going to school from K to 12 was socialization, right? Was for you to learn how to get along with other people. It's a very important part of our education system is learning socialization. So that would be a latent function of our education system. So those are the three keywords and concepts from that you really need to know there. And then the last chunk of this chapter that is the most important, probably the most important thing from the entire chapter for you to learn, are our three sociological paradigms. So we learned about these frameworks earlier, about sociological paradigms and theories, and it's how we do sociology, right? So we have three. We have critical theory, we have symbolic interactionism, and we have structural functionalism. So let's go ahead and look at this chart. This chart is reproduced in your textbook, but I have it in here just so we can look at it together. So if we look at structural functionalism, it gives you an idea of the level of analysis. Is this looking at lots of big things? Is it looking at individuals? Well, structural functionalism tends to fall in macro or mid. So it tends to be larger concepts. And the idea here is that the way each part of society functions together contributes to the functioning of the whole. And the analogy that they give for this, and it's a good analogy, is how each organ works to keep your body healthy or not. Right? So the idea behind structural functionalism is that society works, and that in order for society works, everybody has to do their little bit for society to work. But that the underlying concept here is that it's all related. There is no part of society that is not functional, and there is no part of society that's out of place. Okay? It all has a place within society. We're going to see over the next few weeks the limitations inherent in this particular paradigm and why we have three, because often you cannot use all three to study everything. We kind of need to use the ones appropriate to what we're looking at. So that's just a very brief overview of structural functionalism. We have more on this coming up, I promise. Just getting the ideas together. We next move into conflict theory, the gift of Marx. Again, this is also a macro level analysis. You're looking at large groups of people. And this is the way that inequities and inequalities contribute to social, political, and power differentials and how they perpetuate power. So the analogy they have for this is the idea that the ones with the most toys wins, and they'll keep changing the rules to make sure they always have the most toys. So this is the idea that people are intentionally replicating systems to keep certain people out of power and to keep other people in power. And whether that's actual power, like government power to pass laws, or that's other kinds of power, like having money is power, right? Lots of different ways to look on this. So this will come up a lot. This is going to be a very common theory for us to see applied to these things, because you'll find it often works out fairly well. And then finally, we have symbolic interactionism. Now, this is the only one that has been exclusively dedicated to those micro-level interactions. And the focus of symbolic interactionism is the way that one-on-one interactions and communications behave. So this is literally how one person interacts with another, how one person interacts with society, or how one person identifies. So the analogy that we have here is, what does it mean to be a X? what does it mean to be anything, right? What does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be Catholic? What does it mean to be Black? What does it mean to be any number of things, right? How do individuals cope with the world? How does the world cope with them? What does that look like? All right, so we have our three different types of theories, many different levels. We will spend much, much, much more time on this in the future, but this is just a very basic overview of these concepts before we move into some more details so we can learn more about these.